So, yeah. Is the recording on?
Yes.
All right. So, welcome to the Mimir Community Call. We have an attached agenda to the call, and should I share that? Should I share my screen? Oh, you shared it in the link. Okay. So we will talk about two bigger topics here. One is the upcoming Mimir 2.3 release, where for Mimir, for which the release candidate should be out by now, I think. Maybe someone can confirm. It's not okay. It's not out yet, but we will have a release candidate soon. Yes.
And we commit to publish the release candidate today. Yes. Okay. So it will be published by the end of the day.
Okay. And so let's go through some of the improvements coming out in 2.3. There's this ingest metrics in open telemetry format. Would someone care to elaborate? I'm more into the Helm part of things.
Yeah, I can spend a couple of words on it. So the OpenTelemetry collector actually support multiple protocols. So we already supported the OpenTelemetry collector using the Prometheus remote write protocol, which is basically the same protocol used by Prometheus or the Grafana agent to remote write the metrics to Mimir. But in Mimir 2.3.0, we are going to introduce the native OTLP protocol, so the native OpenTelemetry protocol, support in Mimir as well. The support will be experimental, but yeah, that will basically be a second way or a second protocol supported for remote writing to Mimir from the OpenTelemetry collector.
Thank you. And next up is increased instant query performance. I don't see, maybe Marco, if you could take this one as well. I don't see the...
Yeah, sure. So in Mimir, we use several query acceleration techniques. Other than various caching layers, we already support splitting range queries by interval, like a 3 days query is split into 3 one-day queries each, and then the result is aggregated together, or we also support query sharding. Query sharding is supported for range and instant queries as well, while the time splitting was supported just for range queries. In Mimir 2.3.0, we are introducing an experimental support for splitting instant queries by time as well, similarly to how it works for range queries. It's still experimental. There are some known issues, so our main suggestion is to not use this feature in production yet, but it's something we could iterate over the time.
Peter?
I'm wondering, how can it work similarly for instant query if we don't have any time range? Can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, by similarly, I mean conceptually similarly. So when you run an instant query, you can still select a range of samples for each series, which is the range vector selector, the one in the square brackets, like a square bracket 5 minute or 1 hour, 6 hour, whatever it is. The way the instant query splitting by time works is we use a technique similarly to query sharding, where we rewrite the query into multiple partial queries. Each one, processing a subset of the time range, and then we run an aggregation on top of these partial queries.
Thank you.
All right. Next topic is tenant federation for metadata queries?
I can mention shortly what this is about. We have metadata API in Mimir for fetching like help and the type of the metric, and now it works for tenant federation feature as well, or it works together with tenant federation feature. So it actually queries all tenants and joins the unions, the results together, and sends the output. So that's the improvement.
When you say all tenants, you mean the tenants that are passed in the scope org ID, or like all tenants?
Only those that are actually in the header, in HTTP header of the query.
Right. Thank you. And simpler object store configuration. I have actually started to document this, but if somebody is more knowledgeable in the implementation, speak up now. So this is basically, if you look at the Mimir configuration, there are a couple of places where you need to set up your object store, bucket, access, and credentials, and so on. This is the block storage, ruler, config, alert manager, and for enterprise, it's the admin API. And it has always been an area where we get many questions on, how to configure this and whether I truly need to copy paste, for example, the URL for the object store at every place and the access key to every place. And now there is a feature where you can have a common, where we have a common section in the document configuration where you can set those things that are common across all your buckets, basically object store buckets, and that will hopefully simplify the configuration. And we'll be including this in the JSON.NET and Helm deployment methods a bit later, but for now it's a Mimir feature that you can use already. Right. Next thing is Debian and RPM packages for Mimir community contribution. Anyone familiar with the?
Yeah, it is what it says. So it's packages. We have packages for both our ARM64 and AMD64 platforms. We don't use them, so if you run into problems, please report them. They are experimental, but yeah, they should be usable because there is a test checking that they actually install correctly and they start Mimir. So hopefully they work.
Cool. And import history data. This is the backfill, if I'm correct. I don't know if Arve wants to say a few words about this.
Yes, that should be backfill, as it's also known as. So basically in Mimir 2.3, we've added experimental support for uploading historic TSDB blocks into Mimir. And we consider it experimental as it's still relatively immature. It lacks, we lack validation of blocks, for example. So it will not be detected if the client uploads invalid blocks. So it's a feature to use with care for now. And basically, the feature is also disabled by default. So one will have to enable it either globally or per tenant if one wants to use it. And it's basically a combination of API in the compactor component, meaning HTTP API, and a command line user interface via Mimir tool. So Mimir tool has a backfill subcommand now, where you are allowed to upload one or more blocks to Mimir. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Yeah, Thank you. And last but not least, we have a minor release of the Helm chart. With this release, and as you might know, the Helm chart has an independent versioning from Mimir. So the version of the Helm chart is going to be 3.1, and it, like I said, contains a couple of minor features listed in the changelog for the Helm chart. And just continuing of one I was talking about with the backfill and the history data, that API on the compactor will be available through the when you install Mimir with the Helm chart, because it's added to the Nginx configuration. We did update the Minio subchart, so the Minio support, because the subchart that we used before was archived and deprecated, and it had some alerts regarding fixes that need to be applied. So now we are using the latest and supported Minio subchart, and also a nice feature that when you install the Mimir Helm chart, you don't need to always supply a scope or guide header in your requests, because the Helm chart configures Nginx in a way that it will always inject a value. And that values used to be the anonymous, meaning that if you didn't supply the tenant where you want to write data, it always ended up in anonymous. But we have changed this to actually take the no tenant ID from the Mimir configuration and not hard code it into anonymous, because some users were actually using a different username for their non-authenticated or non-specified tenant. So now whatever you set in the Mimir configuration under no out tenant will be used in this injection. And another, I think most of the other improvements are quite minor. So I would encourage you to look into the changelog. The changes are mostly backward compatible. There is one non-backward compatible change for Minio, but since Minio we don't recommend the use of it in production, that didn't really warrant a major change in our version. So yeah. Let's see. So that concludes the Mimir 2.3 release. And next topic is usage stats. And anyone care to elaborate?
Yeah, I can speak about it since I built it. So we would like to learn more about how the open source community use Mimir. And the main reason here is I think we need more data points on some key configuration options the community is using. For example, which backend storage, S3, GCS, Azure, Swift, or is the community deploying Mimir in microservices mode or monolithic mode and stuff like this, in order to drive better decisions around the project. So where we should focus our work when we build stuff for the community. We didn't have any way to automatically and anonymously collect this data. So I've introduced a support to track some of this data in an anonymous way. The tracking, some of this code is already included in the 2.3 release, but it's disabled by default. However, I plan to enable these user statistics collection by default in the next release, so 2.4. But there will be, or there actually already is, an option, a configuration option to opt out, to disable the user statistics. Obviously, we kindly ask to keep it enabled, if it's possible, because I think this could help us driving better decisions over the time. In the agenda, you can find a link to a PR which has not been merged yet, where I'm documenting every single piece of information we are collecting. So you can have a better picture of which information we are going to collect in an anonymous way.
Will the results of this
Thank you.
be shared with users, with community?
Any other topics we want to raise, or give hints about upcoming releases, teasers, whatever? Peter?
I would like to answer Peter's question first. Yeah, I got it. So Peter was asking if we can share back with the community.
We can't hear you, Marco, if you're talking.
You can't hear me?
We can. No, we can.
So,
we can.
Yeah, so the question from Peter was, can we share this data back with the community? Yeah, I think that would be great, to share the aggregated statistics. It's something, it's a conversation I already started internally. And I think probably in the next release, we can have more information to share about what we can do about it. But yeah, that's something I also care a lot.
Thanks.
All right. I'm sorry to say that I missed that, but if there's nothing else, then we can conclude this meeting. And yeah, we publish the agenda and the recording. And yes, thank you very much for attending, and see you next time.